Welcome to Discovering. Tonight, the first look at a revolutionary clean energy innovation that comes from right here in the UP.
This is the Solar Vortex Generator, and it generates clean, pure, carbon-free electrical energy 24/7, and all you need is the sun, water, air, and a computer.
And we'll get the latest on what's happening with the UP Honor Flight with a visit to the Bald Eagle Harley Davidson UP Honor Flight Fundraiser. That's all tonight, so stick around. It's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forests thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill, the eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
Clean energy is defined as a form of energy that does not pollute the atmosphere when used, as opposed to coal or oil that do. Global warming, greenhouse gases, melting ice caps, air and water pollution of all sorts, we've heard all the terms many times over. Regardless of what you think about any of that, I don't think too many would argue that sources of clean energy are a tremendous plus to our planet. At least 30 nations around the world already have renewable energy contributing more than 20% of their energy supply. Places like Norway and Ireland already generate all of their electricity using renewable energy, and many other countries have set a goal to reach 100% renewable energy in the future. Clean energy comes from sustainable sources like wind, solar, and geothermal power, sources that create little or no pollution or global warming emissions. Over time, countless inventors around the world have created amazing technologies that have completely changed the way we live. Today, there are thousands of individuals and companies across the globe working hard to develop alternative energy solutions for future generations. To me, it's not surprising in the least that one such innovation would come from right here in the Upper Peninsula.
When air gets heated up, the molecules are banging into each other. They become more excited, which drives them farther apart. And in doing that, it makes the air less dense. And that's why the air inside of a hot air balloon wants to rise up above the outside air. And that's the principle behind a solar vortex generator. So as the air is heated up, it wants to rise up to a higher point based on inclination. And so with the solar vortex generator, what I've done here is I've created a clamshell shaped greenhouse that has a dark inside to it, and that's going to absorb a lot of energy. So what I want is a lot of surface area to volume ratio. In other words, I want a whole bunch of surface area and not a whole lot of volume underneath. So what happens then is that's going to heat up really fast. And in some of my testing and research and stuff, I found that to just go from here on a 90 degree day to here would be 190 degrees by the time it got to here. And so that air, based on the inclination and everything else, is going to want to rise up to the middle. And then this chimney right here is what creates a draw effect. So what I want to try and do with the SVG is balance that air that's rising with the air that's being sucked by the chimney. And that's how you control maximum efficiency of the solar vortex generator. And this, with the cone on it, is actually this. So you can get some kind of a size relationship. So this is almost microscopic in size. The air comes in, the heated air will come in here, and it gets deflected by the blades. And it's kind of like a baseball pitcher throwing an underhanded pitch that's going to curve up into the base of the cone, where this is going to deflect into the cone, and it starts that vortex. And it just keeps going. It gets faster and faster as it goes up. And you turn multiple turbines. This is the inlet valve, flapper valve. It's kind of like a choke valve on a carburetor of a car. And what this does is it allows the air to pass in freely. When this part is not being affected, then this would be closed. And that way you don't lose back pressure. And once this cone goes on, then the vortex happens. Let's say this is a windmill turbine, and that blade is 120 feet about. So this diameter is actually going to be about 250 feet in diameter. And so basically what happens is the wind hits it and it deflects the thing. But they also have an airplane wing kind of effect, so it creates lift. So it actually improves efficiency. But the highest efficiency you can possibly get with a windmill turbine is 59.3%. It's called Betz's limit. And so what if we took this propeller and we completely redesigned it to something different, where it was nothing but a paddle with a little curvature to it and an extension. And then we use 3 of these, so we would make a blade like this. So then we can rotate sideways. That way we can stack turbines up. And the air is going to be hitting here perpendicularly, and 100% of the man-made 30-mile-an-hour winds, which has already been done, is going to hit this blade, 100% of that blade, 100% of the time, and then it's going to move on because there's no turbulence. It's going to move on to start turning a sequence of other turbines. This part here then would sit in the center part right here. Now the air comes in, hits this at an angle. When the vortex starts, it hits this first one, starts spinning around, then it goes on to the next one, then the next one, the next one. So all of these turbines are generating electricity. It's like taking those windmill turbines, throwing away the tower part that holds the propellers, and just stacking the propellers. And the fact that you're putting them this way, it's hitting the blades perpendicularly. All 3 blades at the same time are being hit in the same amount. This is actually a vegetable steamer. It's a perfect example of what I would like to see as the iris that opens and closes at the top of the chimney here. So that would control the input of air here and the output of air here. People want to know, they have a hard time determining the size relationship of this thing. So if this was the size of a normal windmill turbine, this would be 250 feet across. And actually you can go to any size you really want. It's just whatever output of electricity that is desirable. So this, let's say it was the size of a windmill turbine, this would be 250 feet across here. And the distance from here to that opening down there could be about 1/4 of a mile. So using that proportion, it can be enlarged or made smaller as it's needed for the amount of output. So we really don't need a full circle. On a greenhouse, the north side of a greenhouse really doesn't do much of anything. 25% of this circle has been cut out of here, and that gives you access into the solar vortex generator. So there's going to be a portal right here, so a person or equipment or whatever can get inside here and go up into what I call the vortex arena, which is this area. That's nothing but a void. There's nothing in there but air. All of the vortex is circulating around the wall of the cone. So you could actually walk around in here and do your work. So that's the reason for this. And you have access to get into the vortex arena through this opening coming in from down here. Also, the stack of generators that goes inside of here can be lowered down to that hole. You just remove the fins and then it lowers down. So you're always working on this platform to do repairs. Now this angle of inclination is dependent on latitude. So this one was geared for the 27th parallel north and south of the equator. That would take in all of the southwestern deserts and also central Australia. So I'm looking for hot spots for this. So this is going to go out in a desert somewhere where no one ever goes. Maybe tourists want to go there to see an SVG, but that's the only place you're ever going to see it, is somewhere west of the Rocky Mountains. The reason for the clamshell shape is that in June, at the peak of the summer solstice, the sun is actually going to rise a little north of east. And so when it comes in here, we've got the greatest amount of inclination here, so we're going to have a direct hit from the sun. And largely we would, if this was flat, we'd have so much reflectivity that we wouldn't get any benefit from it. Now these portals are going to be wide open in the morning, and that's because this part is active. As the sun comes around in its arc, then these parts are going to start coming into play. These portals are going to start opening up, and as the sun gets over here, these portals are going to start closing because they're not needed anymore. And we want them closed in the areas where they're not active because we don't want to lose the back pressure. And so that's how you maintain peak efficiency of the solar vortex generator. One area of concern with the solar vortex generator is that it's in a desert and there's going to be a lot of blowing sand, so I have to come up with a way to keep that sand arrested. So around this perimeter, the entire perimeter of the solar vortex generator has to be something the equivalent of a snow fence. Now I went online and I tried to find whatever I could, and there was just nothing. So I had to invent something. So this is what I came up with. It's called a sand or snow arrestor for blowing sand or snow. So the way I've done it, I used 1/2-inch angle iron, and the wind is going to come in here as what they call saltation occurs. The blowing sand will hit here, and then it's going to hit this angle here and split because it's 45 degrees. This is going to be a 90-degree pocket because this is just turned around. It's going to get split up into this pocket, and it's all going to settle around the sand arrestor. And this will work for blowing sand and snow. The reason that it's built subterranean is two reasons. Number one, winds coming across the desert can blow into the openings of the canopy, the solar collector. And what happens then is that wind can create rogue vortices, which are like mini tornadoes, and those will disrupt the structure and they could cause damage. So that's the reason why this is elevated over the openings. The second reason for the subterranean building is that all of the sand gets excavated, and then you build the huge tank in the middle, and then you just backfill all that sand back in. So you have a trench here, and all that sand comes back in here and fills that tank up. You don't need to go get more material, so it's a savings in cost. To be able to operate the solar vortex generator at night, you have to store a whole lot of heat energy during the daytime. And the way to do that was a different kind of greenhouse that has a lot of surface area and not much volume. These bladders would hold water. There's got to be enough water to get you through the night. So the volume of water that's held in these tubes is going to have to match the amount of water that's contained in the solar vortex generator in a gigantic tank. So the reason for these constrictor bands is they create a high point in between the constrictors. And so that high point is where a bubble is going to form. And this little device here is going to be a float ball check valve. What it does then is it gets rid of that bubble so that the surface area inside the bladder is in full contact with the water inside. So you know you're going to have a good transference of heat energy. Now these pipes here that you see in all of these bladders, one is incoming, one is outgoing. The outgoing here is going to drain this all into that storage tank that's inside the hill of the solar vortex generator. That stored heat energy that comes in here during the day goes into that tank at a certain time of day, so that once the heat is dissipated off of the asphalt, the water from here is going to go into that tank that's buried in here, and that tank's going to be evacuated so that it creates a draw. There's less air in contact with the hot water, and so it's not going to cool that water down at all. And so at night, what happens then is that water will start pumping in through these radiator fins that you see here. That creates a temperature differential. At night, the deserts get cold. And so that temperature differential that we're trying to achieve in the daytime, where it's 90 degrees getting to 190, at night it might drop down to 50 or 60 degrees, and we can still create that difference in heat. So we still have the buoyancy effect. After that heat is dissipated in the morning, then that water gets pumped back in through this inlet valve. This whole tube gets filled back up again. The bubble will form, and then this check valve here will get rid of that bubble. The sun comes up in the east, and it starts the whole cycle all over again. That's how you can operate day and night with a solar vortex generator. In 2008, when I started on this thing, I actually took a photograph of myself drawing the first circle of the Solar Vortex Generator, which was kind of cool to look back on it now. But that was in July of 2008. And in 2010, I entered it in the GE Eco-Imagination Challenge, which was a big challenge a global challenge of how to create electricity, how to improve the grid, or how to use energy more efficiently. Those were the three criteria. And so there were very few on how to create new energy. And so that was the reason for me submitting this thing and building it in the first place, was to create a different way to create clean, pure alternative energy that was carbon-free. And then you could run it 24/7 as well. So anyway, I entered it in the GE Challenge. I entered it very late with only 3 weeks to go. And then it climbed really fast, and all the people ever got to see was 50 words. So nobody ever saw any of the inventors' inventions. It was just those 50 words, and that's what you had to vote on. So with only 3 weeks to go, I ended up climbing to 156th and by popularity out of 4,000 ideas submitted worldwide. A lot of people ask me, how did you ever come up with this thing, and what made you think of it and stuff? Well, it actually came from another invention. Years ago, in 2002, I invented a tent. It's called a fire tent, and normally you don't have fire and tent in the same sentence, but this was a tent for over a fire. And while I was sitting in that fire tent, I was noticing these vortices of sparks that were coming up every once in a while when we get a slight breeze. And one day I noticed above the tent that the leaves were just thrashing around like crazy. So I called a buddy of mine over and I said, can you explain that? And he said, no, it looks like there's like 20 squirrels up in there chasing each other. And I said, yeah, we don't even have a fire. It was just coals. So I deduced, hopefully correctly, that it was the infrared from the coals of the fire was bouncing off the inside white lining of the tent and reflecting down on the dark ground, and that was causing more convection. And so that was why the leaves were 20 feet up, 5 feet above the tent, were just thrashing around. And then later on, I was burning at a bonfire. I had some of these fabric tubes. They're really long tubes, about 60, 70 inches long, and they're thick cardboard. And one end of it was laying in the fire, and the other end was sticking up, sticking up on a hill, and it had this white smoke billowing out. So I took my lighter and I lit the smoke, and it turned into a blue flame. And so I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And so I went to flip it over into the fire, and I noticed that as soon as I picked it up, that flame got bigger. And then the more I lifted up, the higher the flame got. And so later on, we reproduced that event with a 600-pound log, and it came out to be pretty cool. So that's where I got the idea, that by combining the chimney effect of that tube with the amount of heat that can be created by the fire tent, that put the two together, and I ended up with a solar vortex generator.
The Honor Flight Network is a non-profit organization created solely to honor America's veterans for all of their sacrifices. Veterans are transported to Washington, D.C. to visit and reflect at their memorials. The success of this program depends on the generous donations from individuals and organizations from across the Upper Peninsula.
We're here at the 5th annual UP Honor Flight fundraiser put on by Bald Eagle Harley Davidson. It's an event we really enjoy doing. It takes us several weeks of preparation, and actually even months, but it comes together very nicely to support the vets and send some more people out to DC to enjoy the wall, and happy to be a part of it.
Throughout the night we have silent auctions, bucket raffles, as well as a live auction going on. We'd like to thank all the local businesses that donated. We have a lot of great items here tonight that everyone is bidding on.
This is the 5th year that they have done this for us, and we are very appreciative of them doing all the work and doing this on our behalf. We are very fortunate in that different organizations across the Upper Peninsula are doing fundraisers for us. Just putting the flight together is enough work there. Our next flight will be May 17th. We do still have some World War II veterans that will be on this next flight. And then we have a lot of Korean veterans. And we will start getting into some Vietnam veterans. Back in November, we did open it up to include the service dates of 1941 until May of 1975. So that includes the World War II veterans, the Korean and Vietnam veterans. But also, we opened it up so it includes the veterans who served between the conflicts. So whether they served wartime or peacetime, overseas or in the States, all the veterans are eligible to fill out the application and send that in to us, and we would love to have them get on a flight with us. This is a one-time flight. It is also a one-day trip. We fly out of Escanaba at 6:30 a.m. and we fly back into Escanaba at 8:30 p.m. the same day. We land over in DC. We will see 10 different memorials, 9 of which we will get off the bus and walk around and tour it. And this is the chance for the veterans to see the memorials that have been built in their honor out in Washington, D.C. It is our way of telling them thank you for what they have done to secure the freedoms that we enjoy today. The honor flight is 100% volunteer, also 100% donation driven. We don't have any big corporate sponsors up here in the Upper Peninsula, so it's the little mom and pop shops and the individual donations that give us the money in order to continue with our mission. The May 17th flight coming up will be Mission 12 of the Upper Peninsula Honor Flight.
It's really cool to get out there and mingle with everyone and just realize how many veterans are here. And I think we should just give a round of applause right now for that. Yeah, so tonight we're going to be unveiling a very customized build that the most customized build our shop and probably most shops in the Midwest has ever done. We had a guest that chose a very unique paint set. There's only 400 of them in the country ever built. A lot of engine work. From the ground up, it's a totally different motorcycle, basically. It's a very awesome, unique thing to be able to unveil something like this to the public. So we brought it down here with his blessings. He's here, and he's going to get a chance to see it for the first time. So pretty awesome.
Well, that's it for tonight. If you'd like to keep tabs on what's coming up on Discovering or see where we've been, go to 906outdoors.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on Discovering.